What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Prodigia Games video channel. My name is Gareth, and today we're going to be learning a little more about Adobe Medium. Specifically, we're going to be talking about a couple of things that I wish I knew when I first started, or rather things that I learned really quickly when I did first start, that will save you some headaches. So for the first thing that I wanted to talk about, it's not really exclusive to Medium, but it is something that's true for any art form that you want to take on, and that is that you have to remember the fundamentals. So for example, in this case, what you want to make sure you consider, while it's great to just go ahead and play around in the beginning and doodle and create clay wherever, you really want to make sure that you're creating base forms that will add up to something that really looks good. You want to make sure it reads well, has a good silhouette, all of that kind of stuff. The reason that I talk about this is because it really ties in closely to the next 2 points, which is something we'll discuss in a second, but that's the first thing I want to really nail home. You got to make sure your fundamentals are good, the volumes are there, and that everything reads well, even in a very basic form. The second point I really want to talk about is making sure you understand what your resolution is. Now, this is something that you might not really think about when you're first starting out, but we really need to consider how Medium looks at what you're sculpting, and then you'll understand why resolution is such a big deal. If you compare it to something like a picture in Photoshop, if you start out with a, for example, 16 by 16 pixel image, when you try and draw something, it's going to end up muddy. And so what you can do is up the resolution, and then you can add more and more detail until it looks as good as you need it to. So to understand why this is important in Medium, you have to consider that it's a voxel-based sculptor, which means that basically what it's doing is taking those pixels and extending them to a third dimension. And so, if your resolution isn't high enough, when it's trying to approximate the shape, that's all it's doing under the hood, is you'll get these weird kind of bumpy, lumpy, just strange shapes. And this is especially true if you try and cut things down too small if the resolution is too low. So what you want to do to get finer detail is up the resolution, which if you press down on your offhand, you have options to increase and decrease the resolution of that layer. That's definitely something that you'll get very used to using. Now, of course, the increase in resolution is always going to be dependent on how much detail you need. If you go too far, you're wasting a lot of resources because your computer's just going to be chugging away with all these voxels that you're not using. So that's definitely something that you'll have to get used to as you go. And one thing to note is that resolution is linked to layers. It's not an overall thing, so you can have, if your big broad shapes can be lower resolution, that's fine, and then you just add a higher resolution for all your details. And that brings us to the third point, which is work in layers. When you first start out, it might be tempting to just kind of throw everything together and try and just sculpt on top of what you already have. And that works to a certain degree, but when you want to add sharp detail, you're going to need to work in a separate layer and then merge that in. The real advantage of this is that you can shape all the different contours and stuff. For example, if you're doing a face, you can adjust the brow ridges, you can do the cheekbones, you can do the lips, everything. And each of those is individual, and you can adjust them before you finalize everything. This is opposed to as trying to put just clay on there everywhere, which first of all is going to end up muddy no matter what resolution you're working at. And then also you end up with a lot of parts that are just kind of welding together because of the way the voxels work. So you want to make sure that you work in separate layers and then merge everything at the end. To do this, what you can do is press down on your offhand, and that will give you your little option. And where you see the little green icon that says add new layer, these recent versions have upped it so much that really, unless you're working with something really, really detailed, you're not going to hit a limit at all. So, to tie everything together, remember your basic shapes, use layers to block in those shapes. Here the move tool is your friend, and we'll talk more about that later. And then to do detailing, just add more layers at a higher resolution. Usually, for me, I find it's best if I start out by increasing the resolution twice when I add a new layer. So those are the key things that I want to make sure that everybody knows coming into Medium. If you like this and you feel like you got good value out of it, go ahead and hit that like button, and then go ahead and subscribe and get notifications, because there are going to be some more videos I'm coming out with to go a little more in depth on how to work with Adobe Medium. And in the meantime, I definitely suggest you check out the series Medium Rare by Martin McGee. This is definitely somebody who was instrumental to my learning Medium in the beginning, and his explanations are great, and he's actually working on a masterclass, and when that comes out, I would definitely recommend it. So that about covers it. So until next time, just keep practicing with it and keep making awesome art.